My name is Elena, and I would like to today demonstrate several build improvements, even though their majority part had been done on the back end of our model compiler. But I will try to explain you what have been changed. And I will start with the improvement that we've made for tracking CDT project modifications in Eclipse Workspace by the model compiler tool. As you probably know, their model compiler is a separate Java process that communicates with the RTE using a special model compiler server by sending it requests of special kind. And when you, for instance, build the TC, it sends the request that this TC has to be built, and the model compiler on its end handles this request in a completely separate domain. So it loads all the models there, and it also generates the code, making the validation, and invokes their compilation at the end. And after that, all the generated projects are imported into their Eclipse Workspace. So you can see them here as their CDT projects. And in the classical builder, this process was managed by the CDT itself. So it ran the build incrementally, project by project. And actually, the CDT managed their modification of these projects. However, since we decided to be independent of that, today we have to track what exactly have been changed in these projects by the user after the build has been finalized and the project appeared in the workspace. And one of the problems that you reported is that once the build has been done, the user can explicitly remove this project using their standard Eclipse command delete, and it actually will remove this project from the disk and from your workspace. And this operation is not managed by their model compiler at any sense, and it also doesn't track it on RT level. That is why we improved our implementation in a way that when you invoke the build once again, so it will start from the beginning. So it will make their intermediate model, transform, generate the sources, and run the make. Before that, we actually had some problems when detecting what exactly have been changed on CDT project level outside of their model compiler scope. But now it works, and you can actually try to modify it independently. And their tracking data is stored in the workspace digest file. It existed before, we just improved it a bit. So when you switch the workspace, and this file won't be kept, but once you run the new build, it will be created, and yeah, it actually contains this backup information or cache information that model compiler will use. The next thing is that actually our recommended way for your information to remove the projects, the generated projects, I mean the CDT projects, is to use these commands. It calls remove all projects and remove all generated projects. Remove all generated projects, it will just run this command on the workspace and make all RT subscribers aware that it was removed. And also we found, actually not we, but you pointed us to another problem is when you change the build preference using their standard preference page for building. For instance, if you want to enable their code and analysis, you have to go and turn this option on. And at this case, their existing CDT projects can't be reused for further builds because they don't contain necessary information for coding. And it means that once you change these concrete build settings, your workspace should be cleaned from generated projects. So it's kind of you're making some major changes to your preferences, and you cannot continue to work with what you have. What we did is, if you change this preference, but I think we will extend the scope and include other preferences that we think can break their tool behavior. But today it's only this one. You will get the dialog saying that in order to apply this build setting correctly, all target projects should be removed from your workspace. And basically, in the normal situation, you should answer yes. And at this case, all their generated projects will be removed in the same way that this command works. If you don't want to go with this, then you take a responsibility to track that these projects are correctly cleaned, and you just need to clean then each TC before the next build. Next thing I think I will try to explain to you. So when you trigger the 2 builds in a row and you actually don't change anything in terms of their TC properties or the model files, you just want to rerun compilation today. Before this sprint, we actually constructed their intermediate model for the build, and it took some, it didn't actually take much time rather than allocate the memory to store this model. But we decided to try to improve it further. So today, if you run the build once again and you don't change anything, you have this message, no changes detected, skipping generated steps, running compilation. And what we did, it's hard to actually visually see it, but we now run this step after the loading models has been successfully finished and their TC validation has been performed. So it does not actually construct this transformation model, and hopefully it will save us some memory for the model compiler. But we think that in future we'll improve it further in combination with the built variance improvements, so we can actually have this command even before loading the models. So we will have it here. At this case, we will also save time for loading and save the memory to store it in the domain, even though this domain is cleaned up after all. So this is the next, and probably just for your information, in previous sprint, we introduced the command which is called restart build server on idle time in minutes. By default, it restarts the model compiler server using this interval. And however, when we did testing on our local machines and on customer environments, we found out that when their operation systems goes to the hibernate mode, or some kind of a special mode when it's not used, and after that it has been resumed, their model compiler server has incorrectly handled the requests to restart it, and we fixed it. So if you want to try this feature, I encourage you to use the latest version that we are going to release in a couple of days from today.